Good morning, our dear friends from all over the world. Welcome to Beijing and welcome to join me for this very interesting tour to a ancient temple. So my name is Fred. I believe that we've met several times, and this is my hometown, Beijing. And we would like to extend a very warm welcome to all the friends with Visit Beijing who's been watching this program for years. And today we're showing a very interesting and also a place with profound culture and history to all of you, which is the Temple of Agriculture, Xiannongtan in Chinese. So as you can see, there's a large stone screen right behind me. And on the front side, it says Beijing Ancient Architecture Museum. So, which tells us that this ancient temple now has been converted into a museum for for ancient Chinese architecture. So, without further ado, if you can follow me into this very peaceful temple compound, let's see what we are about to find out today. So, I believe that some of you must have been to the Temple of Heaven. Once you come to Beijing, besides the Forbidden City, the Great Wall, there are many legacy from the Ming Dynasty. But of course, when I say the Ming Dynasty, um, all those like cultural heritage, they survive from through both Ming and Qing Dynasty. For example, the Temple of Heaven that was created in the Ming Dynasty, the early stage. Also, the Ming tombs. And a lot of friends come to ask me, is the Temple of Heaven the only ancient temple that we can see in Beijing? Of course not, because later in the Ming Dynasty, we actually divided like temple of different functions into like different corner of the city. So there used to be more than one temple, not just Temple of Heaven. For example, if you see the very extending, more than 7 kilometer long Beijing Central Axis, in the southern part, we have Temple of Heaven in the east of the central axis. And on the other side, in a symmetrical pattern like layout, there is this Temple of Agriculture. But the ancient emperors from Ming Dynasty, they didn't just come to the temple to worship the god of agriculture. I believe that today we're going to show you different compounds. There is more than one god that's been worshipped here in the temple compound. So if you can follow my way, what we can see here, similar to the Temple of Heaven, it's very spacey. Because the housing space, as we can see the highlights, those are the architecture, the ancient buildings, of course, renovated now, which is a perfect venue for like showcasing all the knowledge and models of ancient Chinese architecture. But the majority of this temple compound is covered by green area. I mean the trees. There are a lot of antique trees. Whenever you see the red tag, for example, the very large tree trunk standing there in the corner, there's a red tag on the tree trunk. Oh, well, take this one for example. That's perfect. Perfect. Speaking of the red tag, and here comes one. So any place when you see this red tag that shows the tree has lived more than 300 years, I believe that's a cypress. All right. So for most of the temples and tombs in the Ming and Qing dynasty, I think we chose to plant evergreen. So cypress and pine trees, those are very commonplace. So what do we see here? There is a very large like open space over there with like stone shrines for gods of like different functions. And also here is like a miniature ancient stone building, like made of bricks. What is it? So if you can just follow my lead, we need to walk around it because this is the back side of it. We need to see the front side. So here I'm going to raise a question. See, there are three openings on this side. If you want to take a guess, what do you think we use it for? A shrine? Like a little house for people? That cannot be possible. That's too small for people. This is the ancient burner. So when the emperor, like when they finished the ritual ceremony, they would place the soaked sacrificial items inside, and that's where we burn the sacrificial items, because we believe by doing so, the burning with the smoke, from burning of this sacrificial item will send a signal. That's how we communicate with gods up there. And look at the beautiful flowers. So as you can tell, most of the Beijing citizens and civilians, they didn't come here just for history and the learning, or maybe educational trip, especially for school kids, on the ancient Chinese architecture. They come here for leisure, for fun, because, well, see, this is a perfect playground. This is the beautiful grassland with all those flowers. And I think a lot of our friends, especially our retiree, the senior citizen, they would spend the entire morning or a couple of hours, just walking around and enjoy the beautiful surrounding, the atmosphere, the fresh air. I don't see that many people doing Tai Chi, but I think this is a public, like, perfect place for like public gathering. People just, come here to relax. And this is another very important piece of architecture that we call it in Chinese is Jufu chamber. And I think it's literally translated as the dressing or the clothes changing, like chamber or hall. From the name, you can tell that the emperor would have to change his clothes to like this imperial farming outfits, before the farming activity started, right? So I think it's fairly dark inside because there is like documents and words that introduce the farming process and where the emperor would stand and how exactly he would perform this farming procedure. The emperor would come here like almost every year because in feudal society, this used to be a great like agricultural empire based on the agriculture culture. So as the top power of the kingdom, no matter in the Ming dynasty or later in the Qing dynasty, the emperor would have to be this perfect example to all the civilians. So early spring, like of every year, the emperor he would come to this temple and farm, which is a big surprise. A lot of you would think that, well, the emperor, he is the imperial like blood. That's the superpower. Now, why would the emperor commit, or why would the emperor engage in such like a humble activity? Did the emperor really step into the farmland and use those farm tools to work in the field? Yes, he did. Well, not for a long time, but for a demonstration. So we're about to see the imperial land where the emperor actually farmed in person. But before that, the emperor would change his clothes here, all right, and not just by himself. He will be surrounded. He will be followed by this huge entourage. Those are the kings, the emperor's siblings, high-ranking officials that work in different departments, the imperial guards, or the guards from the ritual department. They would all follow the emperor to this place. This is supposed to be, and it really was a grand ceremony. So let me show you to a special place, a stone terrace where the emperor would stand on the top and watch like others doing this farming activity. Okay, guys, before we go up, there is something very interesting that I would like to show you. Because for a lot of you that have been to no matter the Forbidden City or the Beihai Park, the Summer Palace, I believe that you have seen a lot of Imperial style decoration, the beautiful, colorful glaze tiles. And that's what we have here in the temple. But there is one like major difference. If you come to see the vein and the design, the patterns of those glaze tile, and here the dragon is always in the middle, right? Which it could be a perfect symbol for the emperor. But like on the side of the dragon, I don't know if we can zoom in, but you can see a lot of little green leaves. Can you see that? Those are the plants from the field. So that's why we created it specifically, those glazed tiles, for the temple of agriculture. That perfectly fits the theme. Because this is where the farming happened, and that's why we need to have more plants. So its leaves surround the dragon. I believe this could be the only place in Beijing where you can see that very specific pattern of the design of the glaze tiles. Very creative, huh? So, guys, as we come to this beautiful farmland, I don't think we can see a lot of that in Beijing. But those plants and crops are not from like ancient time. Those are not Qing Dynasty crops. But just that the emperor really farmed. He would demonstrate the farming activity here on the field. So how big is this place? For those of you that speak Chinese, especially for people that are from Beijing and speak with this Beijing dialect, you know that there is a saying, 一亩三分地儿, or 一亩三分地, without the little Beijing accent. So 一亩三分, that's the traditional Chinese like measurement, which if we convert it into like international size, the little farmland behind me is about 799 square meters. That's how big this 一亩三分地 covers. And this is the farmland for the exclusive use of the emperor only. So when the activity happened, the emperor will be walking down the aisle and holding like a plow in his, like holding the handle of the plow and push the plow to go down the field in his left hand. And on the other hand, he'll be holding a whip, of course, for the ox. Well, there is a very interesting, knowledge in the Ming Dynasty, because emperor is the dragon, or the transformation, the dragon. Anyway, I was trying to say that the emperor is of key importance. We need to protect the emperor, even if he chooses to engage this farming activity. So the cattle prepared for the emperor for like plowing the field is an ox, which is like domestic and more docile. That I think that's supposed to be safer for the emperor. The emperor will be holding a whip, and then there will be an ox like walking in the front, and he will be holding the plow and like walk down the field and then come back, like back and forth for 3 times. And that's the whole procedure of this imperial farming. Of course, the emperor does not have to, and I don't think he could, like finish the whole, like plowing the whole field. The emperor will be doing that in the middle, and then it's all the officials and the kings, like the subordinate officials, their turn, because they're supposed to do the same thing that the emperor has accomplished. And while they were doing that, the emperor will be watching. Well, there has to be a comfortable place for the emperor to stand and watch this. So if you could follow me, let's go up the terrace. So my dear friends, so standing from where we are, we spin the camera this way. So when we take a look at the field one more time, it feels different, right? Because we're standing taller. And this is the terrace where the emperor will be standing. And you'll be standing right here and watch all the officials like farming. So he, being the leader of the kingdom, he has already demonstrated this like motto, the power of motto. And then as all the officials and all the kings that followed him like into the temple, they need to do their own part. So this is what the emperor did once he came to the temple. So, but just in the Ming Dynasty, this is not only for the god of agriculture, because the initial name for this temple compound is Shanchuan Temple. Shanchuan, it could be the word for landscape. So the Ming emperor would come here to perform the ritual ceremony, and not just for the god of agriculture, but also there is a very important god to all Chinese, which is known as Tai Sui. It could be a little complicated, like terminology or things that we need to explain. I'll come to that later. Um, the history of the temple is quite interesting because the temple was constructed in 1420. For those of you that know the history of the Ming Dynasty, you know that when the founder of the Ming Dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang, when he established this Ming Dynasty, then Beijing wasn't the capital. It was Nanjing that was the capital. So, but later, within a few years, there was a power struggle that happened within the family. So the fourth son of Zhu Yuanzhang, he actually launched this military campaign against his own nephew, who was the second generation of the Ming emperor. And he usurped the power from his nephew and took the city of Nanjing. But the background of this fourth son, or the prince, is that he used to be the commander of Beijing. He knew this city, the, my lovely hometown, way better than Nanjing in South China. And on top of that, or more importantly, because they still need to fight the remaining force of Mongols. And speed is the key. And every time when the Ming Dynasty had to send troops from Nanjing to the Mongolian region, it's over 1,500 km, and that takes months. So the emperor made a more feasible approach or decision, which is also very bold. That was challenged by all the high-ranking officials. He decided to move the capital from Nanjing to Beijing. And one leads to another, that's immigration of the large population, the creation of all the palaces, including this temple where we are now. So at that time, it was constructed like shortly, like right before the emperor moved to Beijing, 1420, and the name was Shanchuan. the temple Shanchuan. But later, let me think. That's 1530. Um, in the middle stage or in the middle age of the Ming Empire, there was one emperor who was quite interesting. He was chosen to be the emperor because there was no proper candidates besides him. The emperor died without having a son, and that's why he was chosen, as a prince in Hubei, Wuhan city at that time. He was the king that governed that region, and he was chosen to be the successor for the Ming Dynasty. And that's why he came all the way to Beijing, I believe, at the age of 14. And later, he wasn't like a a very he wasn't a pushover. He was not just a boy that would listen to all the instructions given by the court officials or the emperor's dowager, uh, but instead, I think he turned to be very like challenging, and especially when it comes to a very important question that who should be his father. I know it sounds ridiculous. My father is my father. Who else can be my father? But at that time, well, since a, he was chosen to replace like the original bloodline, because the emperor died without having his descendants. So technically, made him the imperial, the crown prince, only if he would take the deceased emperor, as his father. He would have to take another father, the guy, whose tablet is in the ancestral temple. Um, and that's very challenging for this teenage boy. He was thinking that being the emperor is like a great honor to my family, which also made me like the top of the kingdom, where the dynasty, the empire. Why would I have to take another father, follow somebody else's instruction? And that's why he argued with those high-ranking officials for many years. And as a result of this argument, I think finally, to some extent, the emperor won. He decided to restore the mandate of heaven, where he decided to consolidate his power by renovating and enlarging like most of the temple compounds in Beijing, and that's when they created like a much larger like compound in the Temple of Heaven, and also that's when they renamed this place. So that's when, like in 1530, after like another compound was added to the existing like temple structure, the emperor renamed this temple Shenqi, the altar of Shenqi, or Shenqi altar. So Shenqi are the two Chinese characters representing Tianshen and Diqi. So one altar is for the heaven, and the other one is for the earth. So I believe those were in the southern part of this temple compound, and because of the like the creation of that like earth and heaven little altar, they renamed the whole temple until 1576. That's actually the third year of the Wanli emperor. That's another very rebellious, unusual character for the Ming emperor, because we're talking about this young emperor who ascended the throne at the age of 9 or 8. And also, he's the one who's in power for the longest. He's actually, his reign time lasted for about 48 years. And I think the most controversy or the most controversial behavior of this one Ming emperor is that a lot of Chinese history fans, we all know that this is the emperor who didn't show up in the morning audience or the meetings in the Forbidden City, the morning meetings for 28 years. But today we're not here to discuss about this Wanli emperor. So during his reign time, I think they renamed this temple compound as Xiannongtan. So the temple of God of for God of agriculture.